Dear learner, I am Pradeep Kumar from School of Extension and Development Studies, IGNOU, and this is my second discussion with you on dynamics of cultural structure. Before this, we also discussed about the society, structure and function. So today we talked about the how cultural structure and dynamics moves. First we will discuss about the importance of culture and meaning of culture. Culture is most widely used word and a large proportion of them having vague meaning or not aptly used, and that's why, because it is a very wide term, it includes everything, so it is fit for every context. So particular context, this term is not conducive and good to use. Like if I say your language is difficult to understand, many times people call it is a cultural problem, but culture is not in that way should be connoted, characterized. Second, it never indicates negative notion, rather each cultural element behavior evolves as per social needs. So cultural, in the development of cultural process, development of social needs, culture develops and that becomes a cultural element or part of the behavior. Cultural change is slow than the changes in technology. It is widely accepted, and one of the studied William F. Ogborn and Meir F. Nimkov has studied in this context comparing the change in culture and technology, found that culture is very slow moving than the technology. Now coming to the culture as a concept used in discipline. Culture is a broad term, as I discussed, which include everything what we possess as an individual and part of society. We have certain traits, certain features, and whatever we acquire in society, it is a culture. It transforms biological entity to social entity. I mean, a child birth is just like a biological entity, but that child become a social after through the socialization and learning, getting the social values and norms. That's why a man become a human through culture. Culture makes a difference between man and human. Culture nicely defined and concluded all aspects of culture is that E.V. Tyler defined it. It is a complex of whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, law, moral, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. So, there are many other definition given by many other thinkers, Malinowski, Kroeber, Radcliffe Brown, but all these are insignificant, and because culture's definition are numerous, but E.B. Tyler has very nicely denoted with 6 important features. Now coming to the what is a cultural structure. Cultural structure again is a very broad concept which includes all over the world whatever culture we club together in general, that is studied in anthropology, in sociology, that is called cultural structure. And in brief we can understand that society comprises various cultural complexes. Cultural complex is a lower term than the structure, and many cultural complexes combine together in cultural structure. In one society that there may be 10, 11, 12 cultural structure. It depends the society how big and how old it is. If civilization is very old, then cultural complexes chances are more and more. Further, cultural complexes divided into cultural traits. What is cultural traits? It's a big thing to understand. Each cultural complex divided into various cultural traits, also called cultural elements. Take for example, people started making tools. Tools means whatever technological development, whatever the science development, all these are called in history tools. Hence, the making tools is one cultural traits, and if we see this tool with changes with time, then it goes many more tools has developed. Similarly, each culture has its own religious practice, prayer system, and that is also a cultural trait. So, the third, you can understand that the culture trait include whatever rituals in the society. Suppose a small community having a rituals of festival, rituals of celebrating. Take for example, in Spain, a tomatino is a festival. In India, Diwali and Dasahara is a festival. So, all over the world, every society has its own festival and related rituals. It is also a one form of cultural traits. The most important cultural trait is socialization. From primitive to most modernized society or community, you will find they have their own system of socialization. Socialization means inculcating the values and social norms to the younger generation. So, this is a very old and common phenomena in all the society, all the community. So, you will find this is a very significant cultural trait. Similarly, there are many other cultural traits like kinship. Kinship means there is a close relationship among community between housewife and husband, child and their parents. Similarly, each relationship combined together called kinship. And kinship is also very different in India itself, denoted there is 5 kinship zones. In one society, 5 kinship zones, that means there is variation in each zone to other. Iravati Karve has said that kinship is very important. Similarly, the education is also important part of cultural trait, and it combined together to the cultural complex. So, we saw various cultural traits combined and make one cultural complex. So, there are various cultural traits, each cultural complex has further clubbed together, and that too makes a cultural structure. So, these are very significant that you have to understand. Now, cultural structure and complex should be little bit conceptually must have clear. First, cultural complex defined as a pattern of interaction of cultural traits. Various traits combine together and interact each other, and this pattern is called cultural complex. Cultural complex is not an institution. It is itself an interaction among various traits. Therefore, the cultural traits are also known as cultural element, and each of these elements combined together called cultural complexes, and these cultural complexes play a significant role. Now, we should try to understand. We are studying this concept of culture and cultural structure with reference to our surrounding and ecology. So, culture and ecology has very close relationship. It is a symbiotic relationship. How food habit has developed, how dresses, clothes has started, and what was the context, religion, language, custom, law, mores, and develops, grow as per their needs and adjustment with nature. Therefore, the culture and ecology have very closely twined together. They go together. If culture is developed, then certainly the ecology must accordingly. Take for example, if food habit in seashore regions, and then certainly we find whatever food and crops are cultivated in those regions, whatever food are available in those regions, accordingly food habit has developed. Similarly, accordingly dress has developed. People, if you see entire the world, there is variety of dresses. Nowadays, due to globalization, there is interaction and there is modernization. People are using each other's food, each other's dress, but it is a very closely linked, developed, and similarly religion, language, custom, and laws, mores, all has grown and developed as per the social needs and adjustment with nature. Any imbalances further tend to establish equilibrium. As in the last lecture we discussed society and organic analogy, and this analogy is also applicable in cultural terms. If there is any differences, any deviation or imbalances between culture and the local development, then equilibrium is disturbed and it needs to be further strengthened. Therefore, institutions evolved to function certain role and non-functional gradually. Each institution evolves as per need. They play a positive function to the society, and that's why they exist. There are institutions with the time which doesn't function any role to the society, and that becomes wiped out with the time. So functionalist thinker thinks these cultural items, cultural complexes, very usage, that is utility of the cultural element. R.K. Martin nicely talked about these functional concept, non-functional concept, and dysfunctional concept in our. Now coming to the dynamics, each culture evolves with certain society, certain context, but it changes also. Cultural change is slow, but the change is there. There is a universal phenomena that owing to both exogenous and endogenous factors, these changes occurs. Endogenous factors refers to inherent contradiction and conflict in every society. However, exogenous factors are less recurrent but higher in intensity. And how these endogenous, exogenous factors play role, that is very important to understand. Take examples of endogenic cultural change. Contradiction. Each society, community have various groups. There is class of interest, and that's why various social subsystems develops, cultural subsystems develops, and contradiction is inherent within the society, and that is a endogenic cultural change forces to change. People who have given less privilege, they raise voice against the dominant section, and in this way, this contradiction, the change occur. Conflict sometimes also comes up in endogenic cultural change. Social inequality. As we are well aware, the social inequality exist most of the society in different forms. Maybe in Asia, caste, gender, worldwide, gender differentiation, gender inequality, and we are very much aware gender gaps are not in the underdeveloped or developing countries' problem. Even the developed country facing this problem. Caste system is facing in Asian country or Indian subsystem, but race is very much prevalence across the world. That is gap between the black and white. Same feature is in caste system. Now coming to the economic inequality is also one of the endogenic cultural change that lead to change. If there is class, rich and poor people, that also lead to cultural change. Ethnic inequality. Ethnic inequality refers the minority and majority. Every society has this ethnic problem, and ethnic problem also often lead to endogenic cultural change. Tradition versus modern. Traditional society, traditional norms, traditional social structure or cultural structure versus modernity, there is this conflict we see worldwide in different point of time, and this further leads to cultural change. Regional disparity is the most dominant feature of endogenic cultural change. Now coming to exogenous cultural dynamic. These are less factor compared to internal factor or endogenic factors, but increasing power concentration, increasing other centers uneven economic development, concentration of power leads to a big threat to culture, and it is also reflected in the process of globalization. Exogenous cultural dynamics is very much reflected, and it led to external aggression. Take for example, presently Afghanistan is facing severe external problem, and due to this internal society is destabilized, and this external problem many times leads to cultural change. Ill effects of new technology. Technology develops for the people, but if its uses are wrong, its utility are wrong, then it is a devastating. We are very much aware the green movement. Society on the one way moving for the protection of green, on the other side it is a big challenge to the existing nature and ecology. So this is a big challenge and ill effects of new technology. Currently we are facing the pandemic, whole world facing the pandemic threat. This is also one of the exogenous cultural dynamics. So none of the country of the world is spared with this pandemic crisis. So this is also one form of exogenous cultural dynamics. Now coming to the nuclear threat, we are witness the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two cities of Japan, severely have been forced to change their culture because of nuclear bomb, and that has given further a big change. And thereafter we see mad economic rage, nuclear threat, mad economic rage, and natural disaster play an important role for the. Now we should see how this exploitation and culture are linked. There is two in cultural ecology. One is conservation management system, who is fighting to conserve the system, culture, and other who are exploiting enormously, and that is depicted with this picture very nicely, and it is one of the example of threat and dynamics changes in culture. This is all about, and now I would like to say culture is not a small component. Culture, whatever we have, whatever we learn, all together are clubbed together are culture. Thank you. to all of you for listening, and thank you to the people who are cooperating